They kicked down her door at dawn, and within seconds, her entire life was gone. Accused of a brutal hit and run, hunted by the police, and betrayed by the very people she trusted most, her own family. But what they didn't know is that she's not just a victim, she's a cybersecurity expert. And every lie leaves a trace. As she digs deeper, a terrifying truth emerges. This wasn't an accident. It was a 90-day plan to destroy her. Now the hunter becomes the hunted, and the final move could expose everything. Sometimes, the greatest danger doesn't come from strangers, but from the people closest to you. Trust is powerful, but blind trust can be dangerous. Always protect your truth, your identity, and never underestimate your ability to fight back when everything is on the line. If this story kept you on edge, don't forget to like and share to support the channel. It really helps us create more intense, meaningful stories like this. Thanks for watching.
My door shattered open at 6:47 in the morning. An officer shouted, "Hands up!" as two guns pointed directly at me. They were arresting me for a devastating hit and run, an accusation that would demolish my career, my good name, and my future. Miles away, my sister and parents were celebrating. They were certain their 90-day plan had worked and I was going to prison for her crime. The handcuffs dug into my wrists, but they forgot one crucial detail. And that one thing was about to bring their whole world down. I am so glad you are here. I really appreciate it. Let me ask you a quick question. Where are you from? And if your own sibling set you up for a crime, what would you feel first? Shock, anger, or just disbelief? Let me know below. Just so you know, this story has fictional details for storytelling. And to make a point, if any names or places sound real, it is just a coincidence. But the lesson about protecting yourself from a destructive family is completely true. Let us get started. Officer Stevens did not bother to knock. My apartment door shook with three loud metallic bangs at exactly 6:47 in the morning. That was not a neighbor. It was not a delivery. It was the sound of someone who does not need permission. I was in the middle of pouring my first coffee when it all happened. The coffee stopped pouring as my mind tried to understand. Through my windows, the rainy street was still dark before sunrise. The Austin skyline was just a shadow in the mist. It was the Austin police. My hand shook and coffee spilled on the counter. I put the coffee pot down. My heart started beating faster. I was just wearing an old University of Texas t-shirt and pajama pants. My bare feet were quiet on the wood floor as I walked to the door. I called out, "I am coming." The moment I touched the lock, the door was forced open. Three officers rushed into my apartment. Two Glock 22 handguns were aimed right at my heart. "Hands! Show me your hands!" I quickly put my hands up with my palms facing them. The main officer was young, around 30, with a short haircut and a tense jaw. His name tag said Stevens. Behind him, two other officers checked the room. They held their weapons ready like they were looking for a fight. "Reagan Sutton?" Stevens' voice was cold. "Yes." "What is this about? You are under arrest for attempted murder?" The words did not make any sense. Attempted murder. It felt like he was speaking another language. It felt like a bad dream I could not wake up from. "What? You have made a mistake. I have not." "Turn around. Put your hands behind your back." Stevens did not give me time to react. He grabbed my arm, twisted me around to the counter, and pulled my arms back. The cold metal hurt my skin. The handcuffs clicked shut. The sound was horribly loud in my quiet home. "You have the right to remain silent." Stevens spoke with his hot breath on my neck. "Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to a lawyer. If you cannot pay for a lawyer, one will be given to you. Do you understand your rights?" "Yes, but I have done nothing wrong. What attempted murder? I was at home the entire night." "Save it for the detective." He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the door. My neighbors were all watching. Mrs. Miller from apartment 4B covered her mouth with her hand. Marcus from across the hall was recording with his phone. This was a walk of shame. I was being publicly shamed before I was even booked. Stevens led me down the hall, past the broken elevator, and into the stairs. My bare feet felt cold on the hard concrete as we went down 3 floors. I tried to notice everything. Stevens' strong hold, the blinking red light on the other officer's body camera, the way they acted like I was a threat. The thought made me feel cold all over. We went out into the parking garage. A police car was waiting, its exhaust mixing with the damp air. Stevens opened the back door. A thick wire screen separated the front and back seats. He pushed my head down as I got in. The door shut with a loud sound. I was locked inside a police car. The hard plastic seat was uncomfortable. The handcuffs were tight and my shoulders already hurt. Through the screen, I saw Stevens use his radio. Suspect is in custody. We are heading to the central station. Suspect. That was me now. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe slowly. Attempted murder. Who, when, where? I was at home all of last night. I had a 10 o'clock p.m. video call with clients in Singapore. I watched a movie on Netflix. I fell asleep on my couch. I woke up at 6:30 and made coffee. There was no missing time, no memory loss, no strange hours. This meant that someone either made a mistake or someone was setting me up. Stevens got into the driver's seat. The other officers got into their car. Through the front window, I saw the garage door open to the gray morning sky. The city of Austin was just starting its day. People were jogging on the path. A food truck was opening. A man was walking his dog. It was all so normal. But inside this car, my world was falling apart. The car turned onto Cesar Chavez Street, going downtown. I watched my apartment building shrink in the side mirror. All my proof was in there, my laptop, my phone, the files that would clear my name. They wouldn't even let me grab my wallet. My thoughts raced. You do not get arrested for attempted murder without a body. Someone was hurt, and the police thought I was the one who did it. Looking at the golden morning skyline, one clear thought cut through the fog. Whoever framed me made a very big mistake. They believe I am weak. They are about to find out how wrong they are. They have no idea who I am. They do not know my job. I work in cybersecurity. I am a problem solver. I discover weaknesses in computer systems. I follow the digital tracks that people think they have hidden. And I will find the person who is trying to ruin my life. Our car got onto the I-35 highway, where traffic was getting heavier as people went to work. The police radio made crackling sounds with codes I did not know. I saw my own reflection in the car window. My hair was a mess. I was wearing my U t-shirt and the handcuffs were shining. I looked just like they thought I was, a criminal, but I am not. I went over the facts one more time. Last night, a 9 p.m. video call. I can prove it with the cloud recording and timestamp. My Singapore clients are my witnesses. At 10 p.m., I watched Netflix. I fell asleep. I woke up at 6:30. My alibi was perfect. So why am I wearing handcuffs? The reason hit me like a splash of cold water. It is because someone wants me in this situation. Someone orchestrated this. Someone knew just how to make me appear guilty. The only questions are who and why. Stevens drove off the highway toward downtown. Through the window, I could see the Travis County Courthouse. The police station was just past it. It was a square concrete building that looked like every government office from the 1970s. It was practical and cold, a place where people's lives are handled like documents. My stomach felt tight. This was not a dream. This was really happening. In 15 minutes, I would be processed, fingerprinted, and photographed. I would be put into the system as if I were already guilty. But I refuse to panic. Panicking will not help me. I am going to remain calm. I am going to use all of my abilities, and I am going to show that someone framed me. Because that is exactly what this is, a frame-up. It was a setup so perfectly done that the Austin police came to my home with their guns out, sure that they had their person. Someone knew precisely what they were doing. They were smart. They were someone close enough to know my daily life, my habits, my world. That thought sent a chill down my spine. Stevens drove into the station's underground parking. The harsh fluorescent lights above us flickered on. He stopped the car and turned off the engine. The silence was overwhelming. This was it. He opened my door and helped me out. He was almost gentle. The earlier aggression had vanished. I stood there in my bare feet and pajamas with my hands cuffed as he spoke into his radio to say we had arrived. The detective will talk to you in about an hour, Stevens said in a kinder voice. First, you will be booked. I just nodded. I did not trust myself to talk. As he led me to the heavy steel door of the station, I made a quiet promise to myself. I will discover who did this. I will establish my innocence. And I will make the person who tried to ruin me suffer for every moment of this terrible experience. I did not realize it then, but the one who destroyed my life was a person I had spent my entire childhood protecting. The 15-minute drive to the Austin police station felt endless. My wrists were already turning purple. The handcuffs dug in harder every time Stevens drove over a bump on Cesar Chavez Street. I tried to move on the hard plastic seat, but it was no use. Through the wire screen, I saw the city go by. Taco stands were opening on 6th Street. Runners were crossing at stoplights. People were just living their everyday lives. I was one of them just a short time ago. Stevens's radio crackled again. Unit 47, the victim's condition is stable. She is in the intensive care unit at Del Seaton. Her husband is there. He is a detective with major crimes. My heart sank. A victim. Someone was in the hospital and her husband was a police detective. Stevens looked at me in the mirror. Did you hear that? It was a detective's wife and their child? He stopped for a moment. You messed with the wrong people. I did not do it, I said in a whisper. He did not answer. We turned onto 8th Street. The station was a solid concrete building with bars on all the windows. Stevens parked in the garage where fluorescent lights buzzed. He led me through a steel door into a hallway that smelled strongly of cleaning chemicals. The booking room was large, with a long counter in the middle. Behind it, a woman who looked about 50, with a nameplate that said Martinez, did not even glance up from her computer. Name? She asked in a flat voice. Reagan Sutton, Stevens said for me. Martinez typed very slowly. D.O.B.? Stevens listed all my details, my birthday, my address, my social security number, turning me into a list of information. Charges are attempted murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, felony hit and run, and child endangerment. Child endangerment? A 7-year-old? Martinez finally looked up at me. Her expression was full of disgust. Fingerprints. A woman pressed each of my fingers onto a glass scanner. Then came the booking photo with its blinding lights and a plain background. They made me hold a sign with my name and a long number. My pockets were already empty. I had no phone and no wallet, only the pajamas I was wearing. Cell 3, Officer Martinez said to his partner Stevens. He led me past other cells. I saw a man sleeping and a woman sobbing. The air smelled of sweat and a sour metallic fear. Cell 3 was bare. Stevens unlocked my handcuffs and pointed inside. The detective will be here when he is ready, he said. The heavy door slammed shut. I sat on a cold metal bench, the concrete walls closing in. The room was 8 by 10 feet. There were no windows, just the hum of fluorescent lights. Jennifer Pfizer. That name from the police report kept circling in my head. Why did it sound familiar? I searched my memory, thinking of clients, colleagues, and neighbors, but nothing came up. I did not know anyone named Jennifer Pfizer. But then it clicked. Detective Robert Pfizer from the Major Crimes Division. I remembered his name from a big case on the news. His wife was the victim, and their daughter was with her. A wave of panic washed over me. If the person I supposedly hurt was a detective's wife, the entire Austin police force would want justice. My alibi would not matter. Cops always protect their own, and right now I was the enemy. I had to push the fear away and think about the facts. Last night at 9 o'clock in the evening, I was on a video call with my team in Singapore. Marcus Taylor and Patricia Reed were there. The entire call was recorded in the cloud, with timestamps and witnesses. That was my proof of innocence. So why was I sitting in a jail cell? I heard footsteps in the hall. A woman in a blazer with a detective's shield on her belt stopped at my cell. She looked to be in her 40s, with short brown hair and weary eyes. Miss Sutton, she said, someone has posted your bail. I just stared at her confused. What? Your father's lawyer, Gregory Palmer, is here. The bond was $500,000. 500,000? My father? A cold chill ran down my spine. I had not called anyone. They arrested me less than an hour ago. How could he possibly know? I did not call him, I said. She just shrugged. He called us. He said he heard what happened. She unlocked the cell door. You can go. Your arraignment is on Friday. Who called him? I asked again. I do not know. A neighbor, maybe. She pointed down the hallway. Mr. Palmer is waiting for you. A neighbor called my father at 7 in the morning, and my dad, who I had not spoken to in 3 months, hired the best lawyer in Austin and paid $500,000? She showed me into a small room. A man in a dark, expensive suit stood up. He had silver hair and the kind of confidence that wins in court. Miss Sutton, he said in a smooth voice, Gregory Palmer. Your father hired me this morning. I looked straight at him. How did my father know I was in jail? Mr. Palmer's smile was cold. Bad news travels fast. This is a big case involving a detective's family. I was arrested at 7 in the morning. It is not on the news yet. Your father has friends in high places, he said. Let us get you home. I need to know how he found out. Miss Sutton, his voice became firm. You are currently facing 4 felony charges, including the attempted murder of a police officer's wife and child. The prosecutor will seek the highest possible punishment. We should be talking about our defense, not how your father found out. My phone, which Martinez had just returned, buzzed on the table. I saw 47 missed calls. There were texts from my father, Wallace, telling me to be calm and come to his house in Westlake. A text from my mother, Margaret, said, Paige is devastated. Come home. I read that last message again. Paige is devastated. My sister. Why would she be devastated? She had no idea I had been arrested. I had not told a soul. Miss Sutton, Palmer said, his eyes watching me. I need to go to my apartment, I told him. I have to get my laptop and figure this out. Your father wants you at his estate for a family meeting. Tell him I will be there tonight. I have to get my things first. Palmer's jaw grew tight. Your father was very clear. I was just as firm, and I insist on going to my own home. I stood up. Thank you for paying the bail. I will call you. I walked out of the room before he could say another word. The morning sun felt harsh after the dim light of the station. It was September in Austin, and the air was already hot and heavy. Standing on the courthouse steps, I was out of jail, but I was not free. And one thing was terrifyingly clear: something was terribly wrong. My father knew I was arrested almost immediately. My mother's text said my sister Paige was devastated, but Paige should not have known anything was wrong. I took out my phone and opened the security camera application for my apartment. I had to see the footage from last night. I needed to know what happened when I was asleep. The application loaded and my heart stopped. Someone had logged into my account at 3:14 this morning. They used an internet address I knew instantly. It was from Westlake Hills, where my parents lived. Gregory Palmer was the type of lawyer my father would choose. He wore an expensive suit and had cold eyes. The air conditioning in the small room was freezing, and I was still in my pajamas with bruises forming on my wrists. Palmer looked like he belonged in a corporate office, a man who smelled of money. That is what Palmer was, a man with money, the kind of money that makes big problems go away. Your father called me at 7 o'clock this morning, he explained, pushing a file toward me. Your bail was $500,000. We have already paid it. You are free. I looked at the folder but did not touch it. How did he know? Palmer gave me a rehearsed smile. Word gets around quickly in Austin, especially with the detective's family involved. I was arrested at 7. I have been here less than 2 hours. This is not on the news. Your father has his ways. Ways that told him I was arrested at my own apartment at 6:47 in the morning. I leaned closer. He knew before anyone outside of this station knew. Palmer's smile faltered. I am not aware of how your father got his information, he said. What is important is that he acted to get you out of here. Why? The question filled the small room. Palmer looked at me. Because you are his daughter. I have not talked to him in 3 months. Family is family, Miss Sutton. Palmer finally opened the folder. Now we need a plan. You face 4 serious charges: attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, felony hit and run, and child endangerment. The district attorney will not be lenient. The victim is Detective Robert Pfizer's wife. Their 7-year-old daughter was in the car with her. My stomach clenched. A 7-year-old girl. I did not do this. That is what we need to prove. But for now, the evidence points to you. He took out a paper. They found your driver's license at the crash scene. An anonymous 911 caller reported seeing you run away. We have to build your alibi, find witnesses, and question the evidence. What 911 call? Palmer checked his papers. The call came in around 9:27 at night. The person said they saw a woman who looked like you running from the corner of Lamar and 6th Street. 9:27, that was 10 minutes after the accident. Who made the call? It was anonymous, he said. That is the problem. My mind was spinning. An anonymous call is impossible to trace. It came from someone who wanted to hide their identity. Someone who… Miss Sutton, Palmer was watching me. Do you have an alibi for last night? Yes. I was on a video call with clients in Singapore. It was from 9 to 10 in the evening. The call was recorded with video and timestamps. After the call, I was at home by myself. Can anyone confirm you were home after 10? No, I said, but that leaves a gap in time. Palmer wrote something down. The accident was at 9:14. If your video call began at 9, you were on camera. That is very helpful. We can use that. I was on camera for the whole hour. I never left my apartment. We will need a copy of that recording, he said, and we have to explain why your license was at the scene of the crime. I started to speak but stopped. How did my license get there? I thought I had lost it 2 months ago. I have to get my laptop, I said. All of my work files are at my apartment. Palmer nodded. Your father wants you at his house first. He has called a family meeting. The way he said it, so calm and normal, sent a chill down my spine. How does my father know what I need? I am sorry, I said. You said he wants me at his house. Did he tell you to say that to me? Palmer's face showed no emotion. Your father is worried about you. He wants to be sure you are safe and that we are all on the same page. Tell him I will come over tonight, I said. I need to go home first and understand what is going on. Palmer's jaw clenched. Your father made it very clear. He wants you in Westlake right now. The word wants sounded like an order. I got up from my chair. Thank you for posting the bail. I will be in touch. Miss Sutton, I really think you should. I will call you later. I left before he could continue to argue. The clerk at the front desk gave me my things in a large brown envelope. It held my phone, my wallet, and my keys. My phone's battery was dead. I had to ask to borrow a charger and wait 10 minutes for it to turn on. As soon as it came to life, a flood of notifications appeared. I had 47 missed calls. There were text messages from people I knew and some I did not. I scrolled down the list. My father Wallace had texted, "Stay calm, do not say anything, come to Westlake." He sent it at 7:14 in the morning, just 30 minutes after my arrest. My mother Margaret had texted, "Paige is devastated, come home." She sent that at 7:22. I looked at her message for a long time. Paige is devastated. My sister, my 28-year-old sister who lives with our parents and plans weddings for the rich. I had not spoken to her since July. How could she be heartbroken? She never knew I was arrested. I had not told a single soul, but maybe she already found out. I kept scrolling. My father had sent more messages. My mother's business partner asked if I was okay. A couple of my co-workers from Securate Solutions had also texted. How did every one of them know? I signed the release forms without reading them and stepped out of the station. The September sun was blinding. The Austin heat felt like a solid wall. The air was thick with that summer humidity that makes you sweat just by standing still. The courthouse steps were empty, except for a man smoking and a woman yelling into her phone. Just regular people with regular problems. I was released, but I was not free. I opened my phone to make a call. I had to call my boss. I needed to explain my arrest for attempted murder was a huge mistake. But first, I had to understand what happened last night. I opened my apartment's security app. My access let me see cameras in the hallway and lobby. If anyone came to my door, it would be on video. The application loaded very slowly on the station's poor Wi-Fi. Then, the login screen popped up. The last login was at 3:14 a.m. on September 17, 2024. The IP address was 198.51.100.47, my parents' house in Westlake Hills. Someone had logged into my security account just 4 hours before my arrest, from their estate 12 miles away. My hands started to shake. Wallace and Margaret lived at 1847 Westlake Drive. I recognized that IP address because I set up their home network 5 years ago. A member of my own family had viewed my security cameras in the middle of the night. They were either watching me or deleting evidence. I looked back at the police station, then down at my phone. I saw the messages from my father telling me to come home. That is when I knew. This was not a mistake, it was a setup. My apartment felt strange when I walked back inside. The place that was once my safe space now felt like a crime scene. My simple furniture and large windows overlooking the lake used to comfort me. Nothing was out of place, but that was the problem. Everything was just as I had left it 2 hours before. That was when 3 police officers kicked down my door and took me away in handcuffs. The espresso maker was still on. My mug of cold coffee sat on the counter. My laptop was open on the table, its screen dark in sleep mode. I locked the door behind me with every latch and leaned against it to catch my breath. I had to focus. My father was expecting me in about 6 hours. That gave me 6 hours to understand what was happening, 6 hours to find out who stole my identity and framed me for this crime. I placed my phone on the counter and woke up my laptop. The screen came on right away. The password was saved and my browser tabs were still open from the night before. I saw my work dashboard and a client video call from Singapore. A report I was writing for a company in Dallas was half finished. It all looked completely normal, but it was not normal. I opened a new window to check my personal security system. I had designed it myself 3 years earlier. It monitored everything, motion sensors, door locks, and camera feeds. The entire apartment was wired and encrypted. I scrolled to the previous night, September 16th. At 9 p.m., the front door was locked. The living room motion sensor detected Reagan Sutton. At 9:02 p.m., a Zoom meeting started. The meeting ended at 10:14 p.m., then a motion sensor in the kitchen was triggered. Netflix was logged into at 10:47 p.m. The bedroom lights went off at 11:32 p.m. They came back on at 6:30 a.m. It was a perfect digital record of my night. But the police did not seem to care about my alibi. They were interested in a driver's license they found at a hit and run. It was my driver's license. I closed my laptop and went to my bedroom. My wallet was on the nightstand right where I left it. I opened it up. I saw my credit cards, my work badge, and a $20 bill, but my driver's license was gone. I just stared at the empty plastic slot. When did I last see my license? I sat on my bed and tried to think. I hardly ever drive. The traffic in Austin is terrible, and I live near everything I need. My Tesla usually just sits in the garage. The last time I drove was a few weeks ago. No, wait, it was the gym. My heart started to beat faster. It was 2 months ago in late July. I went to a gym in Westlake Hills near my parents' house. I was there for some family event I could not remember. Maybe it was a birthday dinner. I remember bringing my gym bag with my clothes and my wallet. I put everything in a locker and took a 45-minute spin class. After my shower, I left. I never checked my wallet because I did not need to buy anything. I just put it in my bag and drove home. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and went to my photos, scrolling back to July. I found a picture from July 21st. It was me and my sister Paige at my parents' estate. She wore a white sundress and was smiling. I was in my gym clothes. The timestamp was 11:47 a.m. in the background. My gym bag was open on a chair. I felt all the color leave my face. Paige was there that morning. We had brunch after my workout. She had helped carry my things into the house. She could have easily reached into my bag and taken my wallet and my driver's license. I sat back down on the bed, looking at the picture. But Paige was my sister. I knew she was spoiled and selfish. She might even be a little narcissistic, but she was not a criminal. She would not steal my license to frame me for a crime. Or would she? I remembered my mother's text from that morning. She said Paige was falling apart and that I needed to come home. Why was she falling apart? I checked my messages, but there was nothing from Paige. We had not texted since the beginning of August. We had a short conversation about her engagement party. I told her I was not coming. She replied with a passive-aggressive emoji. That was the last I heard from her. That felt normal for us. Paige and I were never close. But this was more than just not being close. This was an act of sabotage. I opened my laptop and looked at the building's security log again. At 3:14 a.m. on September 17th, there was a login from the outside. The IP address was from Westlake Hills, Texas. The person used an admin override to get access. Whoever logged in knew exactly when to check my security system. They knew I would have an alibi for the crime. They knew I would be at home, and then they called the police on me anyway. I stood up and put my phone in my pocket. I was not going to wait for my father's deadline. I was driving to Westlake right now to find out what my family did. The drive to Westlake Hills felt like I was entering enemy territory. I took the scenic route through the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky with beautiful shades of orange and pink. It was a perfect Texas evening. I just kept my eyes on the road. When I got to the Westlake gate, my hands were steady, but my heart was racing. I entered the gate code. It was my birthday, the same code for 15 years. The large iron gate opened. The house at 1847 Westlake Drive was at the end of a private road. It was a three-story mansion with white columns and a circular driveway. The house looked like it was owned by a family with old money, but my father had only bought it 12 years ago after his business took off. Every window in the house was lit up. I parked behind my mother's car and took a moment. I told myself to stay focused. I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone, and got out of the car. The front door opened before I could even knock. My father, Wallace Sutton, stood there with his arms crossed. He was 61 years old with silver hair and a navy suit. "It is about time," he said. "We have to talk." I walked inside without saying anything. The foyer looked exactly the same. It had white marble floors and a huge crystal chandelier. A large painting of the Texas hills hung on the wall. The house smelled of lavender and wealth. My mother, Margaret, came out of the kitchen. She looked smaller than I remembered, with her perfect blonde hair and clean linen blouse. She rushed toward me. "Oh, Reagan, sweetheart, this is all so terrible. Are you all right?" I took a step back to avoid her touch. "How did you know I was arrested?" My father's jaw clenched. "Gregory called me. Now sit down." "We need a plan," he said. He turned and walked into the living room, expecting me to follow. Margaret hesitated for a moment, then went after him. I stood there, looking around the house. It never felt like my home, even after all the years I spent growing up there. It was always my father's house, with his rules and his money. I walked into the living room. Wallace was in his leather armchair with a glass of scotch. No one else was ever allowed in that chair. Margaret sat on the edge of the sofa. They both looked at me like I was a problem that needed to be fixed. I sat down across from them and crossed my arms. Wallace started to speak. "Gregory says the evidence against you is weak. Just your driver's license and an anonymous tip. We can fight this." I looked at him. "An anonymous tip? What tip?" My mother's hands nervously twisted in her lap. "Someone called 911. They said they saw a woman who looked like you running from the accident." I asked. "Who called?" My father's voice became sharp. "It was anonymous. That is what anonymous means." I stared straight at him. He was lying. I could see it in how tightly he held his glass. I could see it in how my mother refused to look at me. They knew who made the call. Before I could say another word, I heard footsteps from the kitchen. "Reagan?" Paige stood in the doorway. Her eyes were wide and her mascara was smudged. She had on a large cashmere sweater and yoga pants. Her blonde hair was tied up in a messy bun. It looked like she had been crying for a very long time. She ran to me with her arms wide open. I stood still and did not move. Paige stopped just a foot away, her smile fading. "Oh my goodness, are you all right?" Her voice was shaky. I cannot believe this is happening. She said Jennifer Fisher is best friends with my wedding coordinator. This is so terrible. I became very quiet and still. Your wedding coordinator knows Jennifer. Paige blinked. Well, Austin is a small town. Everybody knows everybody, you know? I looked at her very closely. The tears seemed real. Her eyes were red and her cheeks were blotchy, but something felt wrong. Her hands shook, but her eyes were sharp and focused. She was not falling apart. She was putting on a show. Paige, I said in a slow voice, where were you last night at 9:14? The entire room fell silent. Wallace slammed his glass on the table. What in the world is that kind of question? I did not take my eyes off Paige. It is a simple question. Where were you? Paige's mouth opened and closed a few times. I I was right here at home with Mom and Dad. We ate dinner. I looked over at Margaret. Is that correct? Yes, she said very quickly. Too quickly. Yes, we all ate dinner together. What was for dinner? Margaret paused. I cooked chicken, roasted chicken. What time? 7, Wallace interrupted. We ate at 7. Paige was here the entire night. What are you trying to say, Reagan? I stood up from my chair. Paige moved backward a step. I am not trying to say anything, I said. I am asking questions because a person used my driver's license to ruin a woman's life last night. A person logged into my building security system at 3 in the morning from this house, and a person called 911 to make sure that I would be the one arrested. That is ridiculous, Wallace began. Is it? I stared at Paige. Is it really? I looked at her left hand. It was bandaged. White gauze was wrapped around her knuckles, held on with medical tape. What happened to your hand? I asked. Paige looked down at it and then quickly hid her hands in her sweater pockets. It is nothing. I cut it while I was cooking. When? Yesterday. Before or after 9:14? Reagan, stop this. Wallace stood up, his voice booming like thunder. You are upset. You are afraid. But you will not come into my home and accuse your own sister. I need to use the bathroom. Nobody moved. Upstairs, I said. Wallace's jaw was tight. After a moment, he gave a nod. I left the room, walked up the familiar stairs, and made a left turn at the top. But I did not go into the bathroom. I went into Paige's bedroom. What I discovered in there was about to change our lives forever. Paige's childhood room had not changed much. It still had the same light pink walls, the same feeling of easy wealth hung in the air like an expensive perfume. I shut the door quietly behind me and stood perfectly still to listen. From downstairs, I could hear Wallace's low, sharp voice. I heard my mother's softer answers. I heard the sound of glasses clinking. Good. They all thought I was in the bathroom. I turned my head and looked around the room. There was a queen-size bed with a white duvet and pillows arranged in perfect order. A vanity table was covered with costly skincare items, serums, masks, and jade rollers. The door to a walk-in closet was partly open. Designer handbags were lined up on shelves like pieces of art, and on the desk next to the window, a laptop was still open. The screen was dark, but a small power light was glowing. It was in sleep mode. I walked across the room in 3 quick steps and touched the trackpad. The screen immediately lit up. There was no password, just the desktop, looking bright and clean. The background image was a professional engagement picture. Paige was in a white lace dress, smiling at the camera. Her hand was resting on the chest of a man in his mid-30s. He had dark hair, an expensive watch, and a confident smile. I had never seen him before. I looked at the icons at the bottom of the screen. Safari, Messages, Instagram, a calendar, and 7 open internet tabs. I moved in closer. The first few tabs were normal. A wedding location in Fredericksburg, a Pinterest page called Fall Wedding Aesthetic, a Saks Fifth Avenue shopping cart with 3 bridesmaid dresses in it. It was nothing out of the ordinary, just wedding plans. I was just about to shut the laptop when I saw the very last tab. The label on it said Private Browsing. My hand paused over the trackpad. I clicked on it. The screen showed a list of internet addresses. It was the browser history from a private window. It seemed one page had not been closed. I scrolled down the page and I felt my blood turn to ice. September 14th, 2024, at 11:47 p.m., how to report hit and run anonymously, Austin. September 14th, 2024, at 11:52 p.m. Do police check alibis of family members? September 15th, 2024, at 12:03 a.m. Austin Police non-emergency number. September 15th, 2024, at 12:18 a.m. How long does forensic analysis take? September 16th, 2024, at 3:47 p.m. Can deleted text messages be recovered by police? September 16th, 2024, at 8:52 p.m. What happens if you leave scene of accident, Texas? I just stared at the screen. My heart was pounding inside my chest. Paige had been researching all of this for days, even before the crash. She had Googled how to secretly report a hit and run, how to avoid being caught, and how to set someone up. And on the night of the crash, she did it. My hands were shaking as I took out my phone and turned on the camera. I took 3 fast pictures, one of the entire screen and 2 closer shots of the search questions. I closed the browser tab and put the laptop back just how I found it, in sleep mode with a dark screen. I took a step back from the desk, breathing heavily. I needed more evidence. The browser history was not going to be enough. Any good lawyer could say it was just research. They could claim Paige was writing a blog or a crime podcast or some other ridiculous excuse. I needed real proof. I went to the vanity and pulled open the top drawer. Inside were makeup brushes, lip glosses, and fake eyelashes. In the second drawer, I found jewelry, tangled necklaces, and a Tiffany box. I opened the third drawer and I froze. In the back, partly hidden under a pile of old birthday cards, was a small black notebook. I took it out. The cover was plain. There was no title or label on it. It was just a cheap spiral notebook from a drugstore, the kind you use for shopping lists. I opened it, and my stomach felt like it dropped. The first page had a date, July 29th, 2024. Day 1. Took R's driver's license from her gym bag at Lifetime. She had no idea. I am keeping it in my car just in case. I turned the page. Day 18. Researched Austin Police Department procedures. They always arrest the person whose ID is at the scene. They do not ask questions if there is an anonymous call. Day 32. Chose the target. Jennifer Fisher, a detective's wife. Perfect. If I hit a police officer's family, they will investigate aggressively. Reagan will not have a chance to figure it out. Day 47, practice drive. Drove by 4th and Elm at 9:15 p.m. The intersection is very dark. There are no cameras. The victim always walks her dog at that exact time. Day 60, engagement party this weekend. Reagan is not coming. Great. She is already distancing herself from the family. It makes it easier to ruin her. Day 75, just one more week. Everything is set. The license, the car, and the route. Reagan's perfect little life is about to be over, and I will finally be the daughter who is successful. I felt like I could not breathe. My eyesight started to get blurry. Paige did not just take my license. She had been planning this for months. She had stalked Jennifer Fisher. She had practiced the driving route. She had researched how to frame me, step by step, as if it were a school project, as if I were a problem she needed to get rid of. I heard footsteps in the hall. I quickly put the notebook back in the drawer, pushed it shut, and stood up right as the door opened. Paige was standing there, her eyes looking at me suspiciously. Reagan, are you in my room? I made my face look blank, tired, and stressed. Yeah, I just needed some time alone. It has been a very long day. Paige came into the room, her eyes looking all around. She looked at the desk, the closet, and the vanity. Why are you in my room? The bathroom was busy, I said. I just had to find a quiet place. Her eyes stayed on the desk and the laptop for a moment. Then she looked back at me. You should probably go home, she said in a soft voice. Get some sleep. This has all been very hard. I nodded. Yeah, you are right. I started to walk toward the door, but Paige reached out and took my wrist. You do believe me, do you not? Her voice was shaky and tears started to form in her eyes again. That I was here with Mom and Dad. You believe me? I looked down at her hand, at her knuckles. There were fresh scrapes. The skin was red and raw, still healing. It was the kind of injury you get from an airbag hitting your hands against the steering wheel at high speed. I looked up and straight into her eyes. Of course I believe you, I said. You are my sister. She smiled, looking relieved, and she let go of my wrist. I walked out of the room, down the stairs, and past Wallace and Margaret in the living room. I did not say goodbye. I just went out the front door, got into my car, and started driving. But I did not drive home. I stopped my car 2 blocks away. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I opened my phone. 3 things were now very clear. First, Paige had researched how to frame someone for a crime weeks before it even happened. Second, she had new injuries on her hands that looked like they came from an airbag. And third, my parents were helping her lie about it. But the worst part was still a mystery to me. I couldn't imagine how long Paige had schemed to ruin my life. I did not sleep at all that night. At 6 in the morning, I was in my home office. 3 computer screens glowed in the dark as I followed every digital trail I could find. The photos from Paige's room were on the left monitor. I saw browser searches, dates, and timestamps. The middle screen showed a terminal, blinking and waiting for my commands. On the right, I built a timeline in a spreadsheet. July 21st, my driver's license was stolen from my gym bag. July 29th was day 1 of Paige's handwritten journal. September 14th to 16th, she searched Google for how to frame someone for a hit and run. The crash was September 16th at 9:14 p.m. My arrest was September 17th at 6:47 a.m. But the official story had major gaps. I needed more than a browser history and a diary. I needed real proof for a courtroom. Proof that would stand up against the expensive lawyers Wallace would surely hire. I leaned back, sipping my cold coffee, and just stared at the ceiling. Then a memory hit me. 5 years ago, my mother asked me to set up iCloud family sharing. She wanted to share pictures and calendars. I spent a whole afternoon linking everyone's accounts. And since I set it all up, I was still the family admin, which meant I had access to all their devices. I shot up in my chair, opened a new tab, and went to the iCloud website. I logged in using the family administrator password. The main screen loaded, showing 4 accounts for my family. I clicked on Paige's name. A list of her devices popped up: an iPhone 14 Pro, a MacBook Pro, and an iPad Air. All of them were online. All of them were backing up their data. A small smile crept across my face. Let us see what you have been hiding, little sister. I clicked on the iPhone backup from 2 days ago, September 16th, the day of the incident. The 6 GB download started. I poured myself another coffee and waited. The bar slowly moved forward. 90%. Then it was finished. I opened the file with a special tool I use at work for data recovery. The program displayed everything from her phone: messages, pictures, app information, call records, and location data. I decided to check her messages first. The tool had found several deleted conversations. I opened the first one. It was a text exchange between Paige and a number I did not recognize. The area code was 214 for Dallas. I scrolled to the very beginning of the chat. It was from July 15th, 2024. The first text read, "Got what you need, $500, Bitcoin only." Paige had texted back, "How do I know it is real?" The unknown person replied, "It will scan. I used it myself. Never had a problem." The truth hit me. She had purchased a fake ID. I read further. On July 28th, Paige asked if it would work in bars. The seller said yes, but warned her that one DUI would be the end of the line. My hands gripped the chair. DUI. She had planned to get into a drunk driving accident. She intended to use my license to cover her tracks. She had even researched enough to get a backup identity. I took a picture of the screen and saved it to my evidence folder. Then I moved on to her financial records. Paige's Venmo account was connected to the family iCloud, so I could view her entire transaction history. I went back to the middle of July to the 15th. I found a $500 payment to someone named Alex M. The note on the payment said, "Thanks for the referral." I did a search for the username and found an Alex Martinez, a 32-year-old man from Dallas. Then, a monitoring tool I use for work found a match for his name on the dark web. Alex Martinez's name was all over forums that discussed fake identification, burner phones, and forged documents. He was not just some small-time operator. He was a professional. Paige had paid him $500 and then used a phony Venmo transaction to hide it. I kept searching. I opened Paige's Coinbase account. She had connected it to the family account years before to invest in cryptocurrency. I looked at her transaction log. On July 15th, 2024, she bought $500 in Bitcoin. She immediately sent it to an external digital wallet. The wallet could not be traced, but the date and time were a perfect match. She had bought the Bitcoin on the very same day she paid Alex Martinez. She knew exactly what she was doing the whole time. I saved the Coinbase information to my growing folder of evidence. Then I dug even deeper and accessed her credit card statements. Most of the charges were for typical things like makeup, clothes, and yoga classes. But one single transaction jumped out at me. On August 10th, 2024, there was a $200 charge to Insight Surveillance LLC. I searched for the company name online. It was a private investigation firm located in South Austin. They were known for being expensive and very discreet. My heart started to beat faster. Why would she hire a private investigator? Was it to watch me, to follow Jennifer Fisher, to learn my schedule so she would know exactly when I would be home with an alibi? I opened another tab to find the company's website. The website listed their services, which included subject tracking and pattern of life analysis. They offered all the tools necessary to completely ruin someone's life and make it look like a tragic accident. I sat back in my chair, struggling to breathe. This was not a simple mistake from drinking too much. This was not a desperate cover up. Paige had been planning this for 2 months, maybe even longer. She bought a fake ID. She learned how to frame me. She hired a private investigator. She paid for it all with cash and Bitcoin to make sure there was no paper trail. She had practiced the driving route. She had chosen her victim. And she had documented everything in a notebook like it was a detailed business plan. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Wallace. The message said, "Need to talk. Call me." I ignored it. I was not ready to speak with him. Not yet, not until I had everything I needed. I turned my attention back to my computer monitors. The iCloud backup was still open. I went through the rest of the files, looking at photos, notes, and her calendar. And then I saw it. There was a folder on Paige's iPad labeled Journal Private. The last time it was modified was September 16th, 2024, at 11:32 p.m., the night before I was arrested. My hand froze over the mouse. I knew that whatever was in that journal would confirm my absolute worst fear. Paige had not just framed me, she had documented it. Every single step, every single choice, every moment she had decided to destroy me. I clicked the folder and began to read. Hold on. Before I open the journal where Paige wrote down her 90-day plan to ruin me, I need you to comment. Type a number 1 if you think she did this alone. Type 2 if you think my parents knew about it. Or type 3 if you believe this story gets even more twisted. Because what I'm about to show you is not just evidence, it is a complete blueprint. Day 1, jealousy. Day 47, victim chosen. Day 89, goodbye, big sister. She wrote it all down like a to-do list, so proud and methodical. Just a quick note, this story uses fictional details for educational reasons. If you are sensitive to stories about intense betrayal, you should probably find something else to watch now. But if you are ready to see the exact moment I found out my own sister spent 3 months planning my downfall, then stay with me. The journal tells the whole truth, and what it contains will completely change what you think about family loyalty. I made a new pot of coffee. I had a feeling I was going to need it. The journal had 90 days of entries. I sat back down, with the document open on my main screen, and started to scroll. The very first entry was from June 18th, 2024. That was 3 months ago, a whole season before the accident. I took a deep breath and started to read. Day 1, dinner tonight. Dad would not stop talking about Reagan's promotion. 178,000 a year, Reagan. Director level at 33, Reagan. I am just so tired of hearing her name. I plan weddings for millionaires, and my dad acts like I do not even have a job. I am done being in second place. I stared at the screen in disbelief. This was all about jealousy, pure jealousy. My new job, my salary, my success. That was all it took for her to want to destroy my life. I remember that dinner on June 18th. Wallace had insisted I go to celebrate. Paige smiled all night, she hugged me, and she told me how proud she was. But the entire time she was sitting there just hating me. I continued reading. Day 15, I know what I am going to do. Reagan thinks she is so clever with her cybersecurity job, she will not see this coming. First, I need her driver's license. Then I need a perfect victim. It has to be someone who will make the police so angry that they will not even bother to check alibis. My hands began to shake. A perfect victim. She had chosen Jennifer on purpose. This was not a random act. This was a strategic plan. She had spent 2 weeks figuring out how to destroy me. She had decided the most important thing was to choose a victim whose situation would make the police too emotional to think clearly. I scrolled further down. Day 28. Reagan goes to the gym in Westlake every Wednesday morning. She is so predictable. I will just run into her tomorrow. I will grab her license while she is in the shower. I closed my eyes. July 12th. I remember she was at the gym. She had texted me. I am visiting mom nearby. Want to get brunch after your workout? I had been so happy to see her. We met and talked, and I left my bag unlocked when I went to shower. When I got back, Paige was gone, and she had already taken my license. I kept scrolling, my stomach twisting into a knot. Day 35, I got it. Reagan's license is mine. She has not even noticed that it is gone. So stupid. Now I just have to find the right target. So stupid. She had written that about me, her own sister, the person who had defended her and protected her for 30 years. I was stupid only because I had trusted her. I forced myself to read the next entry. Day 40. I watched Reagan at her coffee shop today. She looked so happy. That is not going to last. I froze. July 20th. Cosmic Coffee on South Congress. I had felt like someone was watching me that day, but when I looked around, the street was completely empty. It had not been empty at all. Paige had been there watching me, already picturing my life falling to pieces. Day 47, I found her. Detective Robert Fisher's wife, Jennifer. She is a pediatric nurse, the perfect innocent victim. She drives home from the hospital every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. She goes straight through Lamar and 6th. And here is the genius part. When a police officer's family member gets hurt, the entire department loses its mind. They will just arrest whoever's ID is left at the scene and ask questions much later. Reagan will not have enough time to prove her innocence. I felt a wave of nausea. She had chosen a detective's wife with cold, calculated precision. She knew it would cause a faster arrest because the police would be too angry and protective to carefully check my alibi. She had turned the entire system into a weapon against me. I continued reading. The entries became more specific and methodical. Day 52 called a private investigator in South Austin. $200 for a complete report on Jennifer Fisher's daily life. It was worth every single penny. She actually hired someone to follow Jennifer just to learn her schedule. This was not simple jealousy getting out of hand. This was a detailed project. Day 60 engagement party this weekend. Reagan is not coming. That's good. She is already distancing herself from the family. It makes her so much easier to destroy. August 10th. I had missed her party. I told her I had to work. I thought I was protecting my peace. I never knew I was making it simpler for her to frame me. Day 68. I bought a fake identification card from a man in Dallas. $500 in Bitcoin. It can be scanned, so if I get stopped by the police before the crash, I can show them this instead of my own. Reagan's license will be clean until I am ready to use it. She had considered every detail, a false identity, a secret payment, and backup plans. This was not a crime of passion. This was calculated and professional. Day 75 practice run last night. I drove Dad's Range Rover through the intersection drunk at 9:15. There were no police cars and no cameras that I could see. The timing is perfect. Jennifer's car drives through there at the exact same time every night. I had to stop scrolling. My eyes were getting blurry. She had practiced it. She had intentionally driven drunk to test the plan, to ensure she would not get caught, and to get the timing just right. This was not some terrible accident. This was not a frantic attempt to hide a mistake. This was a rehearsal. September 2nd, I was at my apartment that night working. 12 miles away, my sister was practicing how to destroy my life. I made myself continue reading. Day 82. I told Mom the plan. She cried at first, but then Dad talked to her. He said, Reagan has always been a problem. She always acted like she was better than us. He said, this experience will teach her to be humble. Mom promised to make the anonymous 911 call. She will use a disposable phone and say she saw a woman who looked like Reagan running away from the accident. It is perfect. I felt something inside me just shatter. My own mother, my mother, had consented to this. She had cried about it, but she still agreed because Wallace had persuaded her. They both believed I deserved this. I was difficult because I would not let Wallace dictate my career path. I was difficult because I moved out when I was 25 and did not need his money. For that, he thought I needed a lesson in humility by going to prison. I scrolled down to the very last entries as tears clouded my vision. Day 89, September 16th, the evening before I was arrested. Everything is ready for tomorrow night. I will hit Jennifer's card about 9:17. Reagan will be on her silly Zoom meeting, a perfect alibi that will mean absolutely nothing. I will put her license on the driver's seat. Mom will call 911 with a secret tip. By morning, Reagan will be in a jail cell. She will lose her job, her good name, and her freedom. She will finally understand what it feels like to lose everything, and I will finally be the successful daughter, the one Dad is proud of. Goodbye, big sister. I could not get my breath. The words just blurred together on the screen. She wanted to completely ruin me. Not just set me up, but destroy me. She wanted to take everything I had built and make me suffer. And she wrote it all down like it was just a list of things to do. Goodbye, big sister, as if I were already gone. I leaned back, feeling completely numb. 90 days. She had used 90 days to plan my imprisonment. But there was one last entry, dated today, September 18th, just hours ago. I clicked on it. Day 90. Reagan made bail. She is probably back at her apartment now, trying to understand what is happening. Let her try. Even if she thinks it was me, she cannot prove anything. And by the time she discovers anything, the plea bargain will seem like her only good choice. Mom and Dad are taking care of the lawyer. Everything is going according to plan. I looked at the timestamp, 6:47 in the morning. That was the exact moment I had begun my own investigation. Paige had no idea I found her journal. She did not know I had gotten into her iCloud backup. She had no idea that I had screenshots of her search history, her Venmo records, her Bitcoin payments, and her texts with the ID forger. She believed she was safe. She believed she had already won, and that was about to be her greatest mistake. I shut my laptop and just sat there in the quiet of my home. My coffee was now cold. The sun had risen higher and light streamed into my windows, but I did not even see it. I had the proof. I had all of it. Browser history, bank records, text messages, and a 90-day journal that laid out every single step of a calculated plot to frame me for attempted murder. But I did not know what my next step should be. I could not just go to the police station and give it to them. Paige would say I made it all up. Wallace would pay a team of lawyers to make it disappear. Margaret would lie on the witness stand, and I found the journal through our family's iCloud account. It was legal, yes, but Palmer would call it a hack. Any lawyer would claim the evidence was spoiled and obtained illegally. I needed more than just the evidence. I needed a strategy. I got up, poured the cold coffee out, and just looked at the Austin skyline. Somewhere in that city, Paige was living her life, making wedding plans and sending texts to her friends, acting like she was concerned about her sister. She did not know I had the journal. She had no clue I had just spent 6 hours following every payment, every deleted text, and every single lie. She thought I was still clueless, still confused, still the foolish older sister who believed her. And she did not know that I was now coming after her. I needed some help, not from my family's attorney, but from someone who genuinely wanted to find the truth. I looked at my phone for a while, then I opened the Austin Police Department's main contact number. My finger just paused over the call icon. After I made this call, everything would change. My family would know that I had turned on them. Paige would know that I was fighting her. But then I thought about Jennifer Fisher in the hospital and her 7-year-old daughter with a concussion. I thought about 90 days of planning, 90 days of cold blooded scheming, and 90 days of my sister believing I should lose my entire life. I pressed the call button. The phone rang 2 times, and then a dispatcher answered. Austin Police Department, how may I direct your call? I need to talk to the detective who is on my case, I said. My name is Reagan Sutton. I was arrested 2 days ago for attempted murder. My case number is 47921. There was a short silence. I heard typing. That case belongs to Detective Bradley. Major Crimes Division, please hold. The line switched to hold music. I stood there waiting, my heart racing. Then a man's voice, deep and weary, came on the line. This is Bradley, Detective. My name is Reagan Sutton. I am the woman who was arrested in the hit and run involving Jennifer Pfizer. I know who you are, Miss Sutton. This is not the proper way to do this. You are supposed to communicate through your lawyer. I have proof that I was set up, I said. My sister did it, and I need 1 hour of your time. There was silence. Then he said, Your lawyer already warned me you would do this. Being desperate does not play well in a courtroom, Miss Sutton. I have her journal, I said. 90 days of entries. She wrote down the whole plan, including why she picked your partner's wife as a target. The silence on the line was much longer this time. When Bradley finally spoke, his voice had a sharp edge. Be at the station. 2 in the afternoon. Come by yourself. I walked into the main police station at 1:55 in the afternoon. I was holding my laptop and a USB stick with encrypted copies of everything I had found. Bradley was there to meet me in the lobby. He was a big man in his late 40s with graying hair and intense blue eyes that looked like they had seen it all. He had on a white button-down shirt with the sleeves pushed up and a detective's badge on his belt. He did not shake my hand. Just follow me. He took me down a series of long hallways to a small meeting room. It had no windows, just a table, 4 chairs, and a camera in the corner. He pointed to a chair. You have 30 minutes, make me believe you. I set up my laptop and opened the journal file. This is my sister Paige's journal. I got to it legally. I am the manager of our family iCloud account, which was created 5 years ago, and I have never removed my own access. I spun the screen so he could see it. This is day 47, July 30th, 2024. Bradley leaned in and read it without a word. I found her. Detective Robert Pfizer's wife, Jennifer. She works as a pediatric nurse, a perfectly innocent person. She drives home from the hospital every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 o'clock at night, right through Lamar and 6th Street. And this is the brilliant part. When a police officer's family member is injured, the entire department goes crazy. They will arrest anyone whose identification is left at the scene and figure out the details later. Reagan will not have enough time to show she is innocent. His expression turned to stone. He said, Keep going. I scrolled to day 89, September 16th, the evening before my arrest. Everything is ready for tomorrow night. I will hit Jennifer's car at about 9:17. Reagan will be on her silly Zoom meeting, a perfect alibi that will mean absolutely nothing. I will put her license on the driver's seat. Mom will call 911 with a secret tip. By morning, Reagan will be in a jail cell. Bradley read that part twice. Then he sat back and crossed his arms over his chest. This shows it was all planned in advance. But how can I be sure you did not just write this yourself? I was ready for that question. Check the file information. The entries were made on the exact dates and times listed. Then check Paige's device history. She opened this file the day before the accident. I can show you the iCloud records. I brought up a new window on the screen, and there is more. A Venmo payment to someone who makes fake identification in Dallas. A Bitcoin transfer happened that same day. And text messages about buying a driver's license. I turned the laptop toward him again. Bradley leaned forward, his jaw set. He looked over the Venmo history, the Coinbase record, and the deleted texts I had recovered. When he was done, he looked at me. You also have an alibi that we never confirmed. Why not? Because you arrested me before asking. I was on a Zoom call with a client in Singapore from 9 to 10 p.m. on the night of the crash. The entire call is recorded, time-stamped, and saved online. I can give you the link this very second. Bradley's eyes narrowed. Why did your lawyer not show us this? Because my father's lawyer is not trying to prove my innocence, I explained. He is trying to protect Paige. Bradley got up and walked to the other side of the room. He stood there quietly for a very long time. Then he looked back at me. If you are telling me the truth, this is more than just a hit and run. This is a conspiracy. It is attempted murder and obstruction of justice. Are your parents a part of this? My mother made the anonymous 911 call, I said. She was at their estate in Westlake Hills, which is 8 miles away from where the crash happened. Can you prove that? Check the cell tower data for that 911 call. You will see. Bradley just stared at me. Then he took out his phone and dialed a number. Fisher, it is Bradley. I need you in conference room B. 2 minutes later, the door opened and Detective Robert Fisher came in. He was not as old as Bradley, maybe in his early 50s, with dark rings under his eyes and a wedding band on his hand. He glanced at me and his face grew hard. Detective Fisher, I said in a low voice, I am so incredibly sorry about your wife and your daughter, but I did not do this and I have the proof. Bradley pointed at the laptop. Read day 47. Fisher bent over the screen. I saw his expression shift from confusion to shock and then to pure anger. He read the whole thing twice. Then he looked at Bradley. Is this legitimate? The metadata is solid, Bradley said. The cloud records back it up. And she has financial records, text messages, and an alibi we failed to check. Fisher looked at me and his voice trembled. Your sister did this intentionally. She picked my wife. Yes, I answered, because she knew that would get the department to act quickly. She knew all of you would be too upset to look into my side of the story. Fisher's hands tightened into fists. He faced Bradley. I am taking myself off the case. It is a conflict of interest, but you have to bring her in right now. Bradley nodded. I agree, but we are going to do everything by the book. He turned to me. Miss Sutton, if I go forward with this, I will have to investigate your whole family. Your sister could be charged with attempted murder. Your parents could face charges for conspiracy and obstruction. Are you prepared for that? I remembered what Paige wrote in her journal. Goodbye, big sister. I thought about Jennifer Fisher in the hospital and her 7-year-old daughter's concussion. I thought about 90 days of planning, 90 days of resentment, and 90 days of deciding I should be ruined. I looked straight at Bradley. I am ready, but I have to ask for one thing first. Bradley waited. I need to be the one to question Paige, officially and on the record. That evening, Bradley made the arrangements. I sat facing him in the same room where I had shown him my proof. I watched him dial Paige's number and put it on speakerphone. My hands were clasped in my lap, but my heart was pounding. Here is the plan, Bradley had said 20 minutes before. We are asking her to come in as a witness, not as a suspect. She will not think she needs a lawyer. You will be in there as the victim asking for her help. She will believe she is coming to support your story, and we will be recording, I had stated, every single word. A two-way mirror with both audio and video. If she admits to it, it will be admissible in court. Bradley had leaned in closer. But Reagan, you are not allowed to force a confession from her. No threatening, no making promises. You just show her the evidence and let her talk. Are you able to do that? I had looked him in the eye. I have spent my entire life shielding Paige from the consequences of her actions. Tomorrow, I will not shield her anymore. As the phone was ringing, Bradley's voice changed to become smooth and professional. Miss Sutton, my name is Detective James Bradley with the Austin Police Department. I am calling you about the accident that involved Jennifer Fisher. Paige's voice came over the speaker, sounding careful. Yes, what can I do for you? We have been told that you are Reagan Sutton's sister. We were hoping you could come in tomorrow morning as a witness to help us confirm Reagan's usual activities and confirm her alibi. There was a moment of silence. Then Paige's voice became softer, full of relief. Of course, anything at all to help my sister. Reagan did not do this. 9 a.m. tomorrow at the Central Station. You will not need a lawyer. This is only a witness statement. I will be there, Paige promised. The call was over. Bradley looked over at me. She sounded relieved. She thinks she is coming to help you put me away, I said softly. Good. Let her believe that right up until she sees you. For the next hour, Bradley taught me about interrogation methods. We sat together at the table. He had a notepad and I had my laptop open to Paige's journal. Start slowly, he advised. Build a connection first, then present the evidence one thing at a time. Do not show her everything at once. Let her trap herself. What if she tells a lie? She is going to lie. Let her. Each lie will make it harder to deny the truth later on. He pointed to the notepad. Pay attention to the small expressions on her face. When Paige touches her nose, it means she is lying. If she looks up and to her right, she is making things up. If she leans away, she is trying to create distance from her guilt. And if she tries to get up and leave, she is not under arrest. So technically, she can leave whenever she wants, but people like her love to talk. If you give her the opportunity, she will talk herself into a corner. I nodded, trying to remember it all. Bradley got up. Go home. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow will be a very long day. I did not drive straight home. I went to a coffee shop on South Congress and bought a black coffee that I never drank. I just sat near the window and watched the city go by. I saw couples holding hands and tourists snapping pictures in front of the murals. Just ordinary people with ordinary lives. I thought about Paige when she was 8 years old, crying after she fell from her bicycle and scraped her knee. I had brought her inside, cleaned her cut, and covered it with a bandage that had cartoons on it. Ray, you will always be here to protect me, won't you? She had asked. Always, I had promised her. I thought about Paige at 16 when she got caught trying to steal a designer bracelet from a department store. I talked the store manager out of calling the police, paid for the bracelet with my own money, and we drove home without saying a word. She did not even say she was sorry. I thought about Paige at 23 when she needed to borrow $5,000 to pay her rent. I sent her the money on the same day. She did not pay me back, and I did not bring it up because that is what older sisters were supposed to do. They protected, they made sacrifices, they gave love without any conditions. And in return, Paige had spent 90 days planning my ruin. By the time I made it home, it was after midnight. I could not sleep. I stayed at my desk and read Paige's journal again, committing certain sentences to memory. Day 47. If I hit the wife of a police officer, they will use all their resources. Day 75. I did a practice run last night. Day 89. Goodbye, big sister. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and practiced saying the words with no emotion. Paige, did you take my driver's license again? Paige, did you take my driver's license again? By 3 a.m., I had said it 50 times. By 5 a.m., I was just looking at the ceiling, waiting for my alarm to go off. At 6 a.m., my phone vibrated. It was a text from Paige. The police want me to come in this morning and give a statement for you. I am so scared. What do I say? I just looked at the message. She was asking for my advice. She wanted my help to destroy me. I typed back very slowly. Just be honest, Paige. That is all anyone can do. I pressed send. 3 dots showed up, then went away, then came back. Finally, a reply. Okay, I love you, sis. I put my phone down and shut my eyes. In 3 hours, Paige would enter the Austin Police Department, confident that she was about to save herself. She had no clue that she was about to step right into a trap, and the one who was holding the door open for her was her own sister. I got to the station at 8:30 a.m. Bradley was waiting for me in the hall by the interrogation room. It was a different room than before, a smaller one with a metal table bolted down and a chair on each side. A camera was in the corner. A two-way mirror covered one of the walls. Fisher is on the other side of the glass, Bradley said in a low voice. He wants to see this happen. I simply nodded. The audio and video are on. When she arrives, I will show her in. You will be at the table already. I will introduce you as the victim who is trying to prove her innocence. And I will tell her that you wanted to talk to her yourself. Then I will leave the room. And if she wants to know why you are in there, just say you wanted to express your gratitude for her being there to back you up. Make her feel comfortable. I glanced at the two-way mirror. I was not able to see Fisher, but I knew he was there, observing, waiting for the person who hurt his wife to come into this room and admit what she did. What if she does not admit it? I asked. Bradley's face remained serious. Then we will have to build our case the traditional way. We will use subpoenas, warrants, and forensics, but if she does admit it, he paused. Then we have her, I said, finishing his sentence. We have her. At 8:55 a.m., Bradley's radio made a noise. The subject is in the lobby. He looked at me. Are you ready? I thought about the 90 days. I thought about Jennifer Fisher in the hospital. I thought about the text Paige sent me this morning. I love you, sis. I took a seat in the chair that faced the door. I am ready. The interrogation room felt much colder than I remembered. Or maybe it was just me. I sat perfectly still with my hands folded on the table and kept my eyes on the door. At exactly 9 a.m., the door swung open. Officer Stevens, the very same officer who had taken me into custody 3 days earlier, showed Paige into the room. She wore a cream sweater with jeans and flats. A perfect ponytail held her hair back. She looked composed, ready for lunch, not an interrogation, but then she saw me and her expression went empty. Reagan. I thought I was here to give a witness statement. My voice was calm and level. Sit down, Paige. She paused, looking toward Detective Stevens. He motioned to the chair across from me, then left the room, closing the door. Paige sat down slowly. Her eyes darted from me to the one-way mirror, then back. Why are you here? Do you not have a lawyer? This is not about me, I told her. This is about you. Paige managed a nervous laugh. What did the detective say? The detective is after the truth, and I plan to help him find it. Her eyes darted to the mirror again. I do not understand. You will. I opened the folder on the table and took out the first page, a picture of her search history. I pushed it toward her. Paige, did you look up how to anonymously report a hit and run on August 20th? She just stared at the paper. All the color left her face. That is from my computer. How did you do that? Just answer my question. Her mouth hung open. I think I was doing research for a client. Wedding planners sometimes. I pushed another page across the table. What about searches for if police check the alibis of relatives? Was that for a wedding client too? Paige's fingers gripped the table's edge. You looked through my personal computer. That is illegal. I simply accessed our shared family cloud account. As the administrator, everything on it is legally available to me. Paige's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. I leaned in closer. Paige, did you steal my driver's license? She stayed silent. No, why would I ever do that? Let's talk about July 12th, a Wednesday morning, at the Lifetime Fitness in Westlake. You were there. I was just visiting mom, who lives close by. You were there because I am always there on Wednesday mornings. You were aware of my routine. I slid another document over, a gym log showing we both signed in 15 minutes apart. I left my locker open for 5 minutes to handle a work call. When I got back, my license was missing. Paige looked at the log. That proves nothing. Where's your driver's license at this moment, Paige? Her hand started to reach for her purse. Do not bother, I said. I know you have yours because the one they recovered from the Range Rover was mine. Paige's hand stopped moving. She clutched her purse in her lap, her fingers shaking. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. This is crazy. You are trying to set me up, Reagan. I am your own sister. Are you? I interrupted her. My voice was low but sharp. Sisters do not plot for 3 months to get each other thrown in prison. Paige froze. What are you even talking about? I reached for the folder one more time. This time, I pulled out the journal. All 90 days of it printed out with dates and highlighted sections. I placed them on the table one after another like a card dealer revealing a hand. Paige's eyes widened in shock. What are those? Let me read you a little story, Paige. It's titled Day 1, My Plan to Ruin My Sister. I picked up the top page and began to read. Day 1, June 18th. Dinner was tonight. Dad could not stop bragging about Reagan's new promotion, $78,000 a year. Reagan, a director at 33. Reagan this, Reagan that. I am so tired of hearing her name. I plan $1 million weddings and Dad treats me like I am jobless. I am finished with being in second place. Paige's face turned ghostly white. I continued, Day 15, July 3rd. I have figured out what to do. Reagan believes she is so clever with her cybersecurity career, she will never see this coming. First, I have to get her driver's license. After that, I need the ideal victim, someone who will make the police so furious they will not even look into alibis. Paige just shook her head. Stop it. Where did you get that? Day 28, July 11th. Reagan visits the gym in Westlake each Wednesday morning. She is so predictable. I will just happen to see her tomorrow. I will take the license when she is in the shower. I glanced up from the page. You did see me, Paige. You gave me a hug. You told me you missed me. And then you stole my license. I did not. Day 35, July 18th. Success. I have Reagan's license. She has not even realized it is gone. She is so stupid. My voice trembled on that last word, but I pushed on. Day 47, July 30th. I found her. Detective Robert Fisher's wife, Jennifer. She works as a pediatric nurse, the perfect innocent person. And this is the brilliant part. When a police officer's family is hurt, the entire force loses its mind. They will arrest the person whose identification is found at the scene and figure out the rest later. Reagan will not have a chance to prove she is innocent. Paige was breathing hard and fast. You hacked my personal files. This is not going to stand up in court. Day 75, September 2nd. I did a practice run last night. I drove Dad's Range Rover drunk through the intersection at 9:15. I saw no police, no cameras. The timing is perfect. I put the page down and stared at her. You practiced, Paige. You intentionally drove drunk just to ensure you could pull it off. Tears were now flowing down her face, but I did not let up. Day 82, September 9th. I told Mom about the plan. She was upset at first, but Dad talked her into it. He claimed this would teach Reagan some humility. Mom then agreed to place the anonymous 911 call. Paige's voice cracked. Reagan, please stop. Day 89, September 16th. Tomorrow is the night. Everything is set. I will strike Jennifer's car at around 9:17. I will put Reagan's license on the driver's seat. Mom will phone 911 with an anonymous tip. By the next morning, Reagan will be sitting in a jail cell. She will lose her job, her good name, her freedom. She will finally understand how it feels to have nothing, and I will be the successful daughter. Goodbye, dear sister. I placed the last page on the table. The only sound in the room was Paige's harsh breathing. She looked at the papers scattered before her, her hands trembling. I can explain, she whispered. Can you really? I leaned back. Because I am waiting, Paige. Explain how you spent 90 days creating a plan to destroy my life. Explain how you stalked Jennifer Fisher. Explain how you practiced driving drunk to hit her car at the precise moment. Explain choosing a detective's wife. You knew the police would be too emotional to check my alibi. Paige opened her mouth, but no words came out. On the other side of the mirror, I knew Bradley was there, recording every word, every look, every lie Paige had told, and every truth she was about to spill. Go on, I urged quietly. Explain yourself. Before Paige confesses, tell me what you think she will say. Is she guilty or innocent? Because in 60 seconds, she is going to explode. The journal, the computer searches, the lies, it all comes out. And what she screams at me next, I wanted you to suffer, will seal her fate in court. Note, this story is a fictional account created for educational viewing. Any similarity to actual people or events is not intended, but if you want to witness the moment my sister's own anger destroys her, stick around. This is the confession that changes everything. Paige's mouth opened, then it closed, then opened once more. I did not. She trailed off. Her hands were shaking. You do not understand what those searches were for. I was doing research for a blog I write about true crime stories. I listened to a lot of podcasts. Paige, I kept my voice perfectly steady. The journal, explain the journal. Her face started to crumble. You broke into my private files. That is against the law, Reagan. That cannot be used as evidence against me. It is a shared family account, I reminded her. Perfectly legal. I am the account administrator. I have had permission for 5 years. You accepted the terms when Mom first created it. But those are just my private feelings. Her voice got higher, more frantic. You cannot use them. They were just thoughts. I slid the last piece of proof across the table. It was a police photograph of the Range Rover from the accident, a black luxury car. The front was completely smashed. The airbags were deployed. This car is registered under Dad's investment firm. You are allowed to drive it. The accident occurred at 9:17 in the evening. My video conference call was recorded from 9 to 10. I was not the one there. I looked straight at her. But you were. Paige stared at the picture, her breaths coming in short, quick gasps. She shot up from her chair, which scraped loudly on the floor. You think you are so incredibly smart. Her voice was like a whip cracking. I did not flinch. Paige slammed both hands down on the table. You were always the favorite child. It was always about Reagan, Reagan's school performance, Reagan's career, Reagan's flawless life. So you decided to ruin it? I asked softly. Yes, she was yelling now with tears carving paths through her makeup. I wanted you to suffer. I wanted you to finally know what it is like to lose it all, to be a nobody. I leaned forward slightly. Did you pick Jennifer Fisher on purpose? Paige's laugh was wild and frightening. I did not care if that police officer's wife died. She was just collateral damage. This was always about you, about making you pay for being better than me. The room fell completely silent. Paige was panting, her chest rising and falling quickly. I kept my voice calm and controlled. So you admitted then, you caused the accident. You planted my license there. You attempted to frame me. Paige's face turned completely white. She understood what she had just done. Wait, no, that is not what I meant. I knocked on the one-way mirror twice. The door swung open. Detective Bradley came into the room, holding a pair of handcuffs. Paige stumbled back from the table. No, please wait. Bradley's voice was even and professional. Paige Sutton, you are under arrest for the crime of attempted murder. Also for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to commit fraud, and obstruction of justice. He stepped up behind her. She turned to me, her eyes filled with panic. Reagan, please do something. I am your sister. Bradley secured her hands behind her back. The metal handcuffs made a clicking sound. I got up, walked to her, and looked right into her eyes. You stopped being my sister 90 days ago. Bradley recited her rights as he escorted her out. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The officer read my sister her rights while she sobbed my name, Reagan, Reagan. I am so sorry. But the door slammed shut, leaving me all alone in that cold room. In front of me was all the evidence, the photo of the car, the internet search history, the gym log. It took me 3 long days to find it all, 3 days to build a case that would ruin my sister's life, just as she had planned to ruin mine. I expected to feel triumphant, but instead I just felt empty. I soon learned the awful truth. My sister had done this to someone else before, and that poor woman was still suffering. The door creaked open, and Detective Bradley walked in. He looked exhausted. He told me I did a good job. He said her confession was clean and would be accepted in court. I just nodded, unable to speak. Bradley sat opposite me. He explained that Paige was a flight risk and a danger, so she would not be getting bail. The district attorney would press charges for attempted murder, assault, and a list of other crimes. She could face a minimum of 20 years in prison. I finally found my voice and asked about my parents. He said they were being brought in that afternoon. My mother made the fake emergency call and my father helped her. Phone records proved my mother was 8 miles from the crash at 9:24 in the evening. She made the tip from the Westlake estate, just as I suspected. I squeezed my eyes shut. Bradley continued, telling me Jennifer, the wife of the man my sister involved, was stable and would recover. Her daughter Emma had a concussion but was otherwise okay. They would both testify against Paige. He paused, then looked me in the eye. You saved them, Reagan. Paige would have never stopped. People like her do not know how. I looked back at him. She will not stop now, not even from a prison cell. Bradley's expression hardened. Then we will make sure she stays there for a very long time. As he stood up to leave, he turned back. He said when they checked Paige's background, something else appeared. An old case from 2 years ago involving a woman named Rachel Murphy. She was accused of stealing $85,000 from her job. That accusation cost her everything. She lost her job, her good name, and her future. Now she works 3 low-paying jobs just to get by. A sick feeling grew in my stomach. I asked what this had to do with my sister. Bradley explained that Rachel and Paige worked at the same company. The evidence against Rachel was all fake. It was planted. And the person who claimed to have discovered the crime was my sister Paige. The room felt like it was spinning. Paige had framed her. He said they believed so. Rachel always insisted she was innocent, but the case went cold. Bradley placed a business card on the table. It had Rachel Murphy's name on it. She lived in East Austin and worked in a coffee shop. He told me I should go talk to her. As soon as he left, I picked up the card. My sister had destroyed this woman 2 years ago. While she spent 90 days plotting my downfall, she had already practiced on someone else. By noon, Paige was locked in a cell. By 1 in the afternoon, my parents were at the police station. By 2, I was back in my apartment looking at the evidence I was never supposed to see. Bradley had called me 30 minutes earlier. He said my parents got a lawyer for all 3 of them. The lawyer was already trying to have Paige's confession thrown out. I told him it was not forced. She confessed on her own. He said the lawyer would fight it anyway. Then Bradley mentioned something else. He brought up the old case from 2 years ago, the one involving Rachel Murphy. He urged me to look into it. If Paige had done this before, it showed a clear pattern of behavior. It meant she was a predator, not just a one-time criminal. After the call, I opened my laptop. Bradley's words echoed in my head. People like her do not start with something this serious. They work their way up. I logged into our family's shared cloud account and scrolled back in time, past 2023 all the way to 2022, and I found it. An old backup from an iPad dated June 2022. When I opened it, I found photos, notes, and a folder labeled Private Journal. My heart sank. There was another one. The folder contained 30 entries. I began to read. The first entry was from June 18th. It said everyone at the office loved Rachel Murphy and her amazing designs, and Paige was sick of it. She wrote that Rachel needed to disappear. I scrolled down. An entry from June 25th said she figured out how to get rid of Rachel by framing her for stealing company money. On July 20th, she wrote that she stole Rachel's password when she left her computer unlocked. The final entry was from August 15th. Paige wrote that it was the day she would ruin Rachel. She planned to transfer $85,000 from a client's account to a secret one using Rachel's login. She was sure Rachel would be fired, maybe even arrested. Then Paige would finally become the lead coordinator. I felt nauseous. She had destroyed this woman's life 2 years before she tried to destroy mine. I quickly searched for Rachel Murphy online. The first article was from August 17th, 2022. It said an event manager named Rachel Murphy was accused of stealing $85,000. The article stated that the evidence against the 28-year-old was overwhelming. but Murphy insisted she was framed and that someone had set her up. A second article from that November reported that the charges had been dropped. The digital evidence had problems, but it did not matter. Rachel Murphy's reputation was destroyed. She could not find another job in her field. I found Rachel's professional profile online. Her picture showed a confident, smiling woman, but her bio was tragic. It just said she was currently seeking opportunities. Her last job ended in August of 2022. For 2 years, there was nothing. She had posted looking for any kind of work, but her last post was 6 months ago. Then there was only silence. I found her current address in a public records search. It was a tiny studio apartment in East Austin, the kind that costs about $800 a month. It was the kind of place you rent when your life has fallen apart. Paige had ruined this woman, piece by piece, with a cold and calculated plan, and for 2 years Rachel had no idea who was truly behind her misery. I called Bradley immediately. I found the proof. I told him Paige did the exact same thing to Rachel Murphy 2 years ago. He told me to send him everything. Proving a pattern would make the case against Paige much stronger. It would show she planned everything and would likely do it again. I told him I was going to find Rachel. She deserved to know who was responsible. Bradley warned me to be careful. I replied that if Paige framed her, Rachel would want justice, just like me. I hung up the phone, grabbed my keys, and drove. The apartment building was in bad shape, a stark contrast to the professional woman in Rachel's old photos. At 6 in the evening, I knocked on the door of apartment 2B. I heard footsteps and the door opened, but a chain lock kept it from opening all the way. A thin, tired woman looked out. She had dark circles under her eyes and looked much older than 30. She asked what I wanted. I introduced myself as Rachel Murphy. My name is Reagan Sutton, I said. My sister Paige ruined your life 2 years ago. 3 days ago, she tried to do the same thing to me. I think it is time we talked. Rachel unhooked the chain and let me in. Her apartment was tiny, maybe 400 square feet, but it was spotless. This was a place for survival, not living. A futon served as both a bed and a sofa. A small hot plate and a mini fridge were her kitchen. There was no television, only a laptop on a small table with a stack of bills next to it. Rachel pointed to the futon and told me to sit. She started to say she would offer me coffee but stopped. We both knew she could not afford it. I sat down while she stood, watching me with suspicion. You mentioned your sister ruined my life. Paige Sutton, I remember her name. We were co-workers at Premier Austin events 2 years ago. I know, I told her. I need you to see this. I opened my laptop to the 2022 journal file and spun the screen to face her. This is Paige's personal journal from June through August of 2022. She wrote down everything. Rachel's hands shook as she scrolled. Her face turned white. On day 1, she wrote about me. Rachel Murphy acts so superior. She continued reading. Day 15, I have a plan to get Rachel fired. Day 25, I got Rachel's laptop password. Her voice cracked. Day 30, I will use Rachel's account to move $85,000. Oh my goodness, she documented the whole thing. She planned this just like she planned what she did to me, I said softly. Rachel sank onto the couch next to me, her eyes fixed on the screen. I told everyone they had the wrong person. My manager, the cops, my own parents, nobody listened to me. She looked up at me with tears running down her cheeks. Why would they believe me? The evidence against me was flawless. Login details, money transfers, my password, my own computer. I believe you, I said. Rachel gasped for air. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. Tell me everything that happened, I urged, all of it. Rachel took a deep, unsteady breath. 2 years ago, I managed events at Premier Austin events. I was very good at my work. In 1 quarter, I had secured 3 big clients for weddings and corporate parties. My boss was even considering me for a promotion to senior manager. She took a breath. Paige started 6 months after I did. At first, she was very nice and friendly, but she quickly became competitive. Any client I signed, she tried to steal. Any idea I presented, she would criticize to our bosses. She turned everything into a competition I never wanted to join. Rachel's jaw clenched. Then in August of 2022, $85,000 vanished from a client's account. The computer records pointed to my login information. The funds were sent to an overseas account I did not even know existed. I was let go that very day. The company then pressed criminal charges. I used all my savings to hire an attorney. What was the outcome in court? I asked. The proof against me was just too much, Rachel explained. My attorney persuaded the district attorney to dismiss the criminal case if I paid the money back and quit, but my professional reputation was ruined. Every event planning business in Austin knew who I was. Background checks always showed the embezzlement charge. I submitted 200 job applications, which led to 2 interviews and no offers. She waved her hand around the small apartment. I have been driving for food delivery services for 2 years just to live here. My parents cut me off. They said I brought shame to our family. Her voice fell to a whisper. I lost it all, my job, my money, my family, all because of Paige. I looked at her, a woman who had been in my exact position just 3 days ago, accused, arrested, and alone. But Rachel never had any evidence to defend herself. She had been dealing with the aftermath for 2 years while Paige simply found a new person to target me. Rachel, I said, I have proof it was Paige. Her confession is right here in this journal, and after what she just tried to do to me, framing me for a crime, we can have your case looked at again. Rachel's eyes grew wide. Reopen it after 2 years? It shows a pattern of behavior, I explained. Paige set you up in 2022. She tried to set me up in 2024. It is the same strategy. Steal someone's credentials, commit a crime, plant the proof, ruin the victim. If we demonstrate this pattern to the prosecutor, they will understand she is not a first-time criminal. She is a predator. Rachel just stared at me. If we can prove she framed me, is it possible to get my old life back? I do not know, I answered with honesty. But we can certainly try. Rachel sat quietly for a long time. Then she leaned over, resting her face in her hands. When she raised her head, her look had transformed. The weariness was there, but a new feeling had surfaced. It was determination. What do you require from me? Be at the police station tomorrow morning, I instructed. Make an official statement. Explain what took place in 2022. I will give them the journal as evidence. Detective Bradley, who is leading my case, will hear your story and compare it with Paige's recent confession. Do you think they will believe me now? Rachel asked. Her voice was quiet, a mix of hope and fear. They will believe you, I assured her. This time is different because Paige has already admitted to framing another person. You will not be seen as some crazy person making things up. You will be the second victim in her criminal pattern. Rachel nodded her head slowly. Okay, I will be there. There is something else, I added. If we proceed, Paige's legal team will attack you. They will claim you are lying for revenge or that you are an opportunist using my case. They will try to destroy your reputation. Rachel's jaw tightened. Let them try. I have been living in disgrace for 2 years. This time, at least I will be fighting for myself. I got up and offered her my hand. We will do this together then. Rachel stood and shook it. Her grip was strong. Together. After I left her apartment and was walking to my car, my phone started ringing. It was Detective Bradley. Reagan, we have an issue. Wallace and Margaret paid Paige's bail. It was $500,000. She is out. My heart sank. When? 20 minutes ago, her lawyer claimed she was not a flight risk and had community ties. I remembered an entry from Paige's journal, day 90. Even if Reagan thinks it was me, she can't prove it. But Paige was not aware that I had her journals. She did not know about Rachel, and she had no idea what I was planning. Bradley, I said, I need you to have Rachel Murphy come in tomorrow, and I must speak with the district attorney. We are not accusing Paige of one crime. We are accusing her of two. We are going to establish that she is a repeat offender. The following 3 days were a whirlwind of police interviews, reviewing evidence, and observing the prosecutor build a case designed to put Paige away. On Friday morning, September 20th, Rachel and I were seated opposite Detective Bradley and District Attorney Patricia Monroe in a meeting room at the Travis County DA's office. Monroe was 58, with silver hair tied in a tight bun and sharp gray eyes that saw everything. She had been handling major cases in Austin for 20 years. Bradley told me she was tough. That was good. We needed someone tough. Rachel shared her story, including every last detail: the jealousy, the stolen password, the $85,000 that went missing, the digital trail all over her life, login records, money transfers, and fake invoices, all created by Paige. Her voice remained firm, but I noticed her hands were shaking in her lap as she spoke of the day she lost her job, the day officers came to her home, and the day her parents said she was no longer their daughter. Monroe listened without saying a word. She did not write anything down. She did not offer any sign of sympathy. She simply observed Rachel with the detached, analytical gaze of a prosecutor, figuring out the best way to present this information to a jury. When Rachel was done, Monroe leaned back. The leather of her chair made a soft sound in the quiet room. Why did you not claim you were set up at the time? Rachel's voice was firm, but her hands were trembling. I tried to. Nobody would listen. The proof was just too convincing. I pushed the 2022 journal to her side of the table. This is the reason. Monroe read it quietly. Her face showed no emotion, but her jaw clenched. I saw her eyes scan the page, taking in every single calculated move Paige had written down. When she finally looked up, her gaze was icy. This was planned and deliberate. Mrs. Murphy, we are reopening your case. Rachel gasped. Tears started to fall down her face. Thank you. Monroe did not crack a smile. She simply shut the journal and returned it to me. We will require the original document and any digital proof you have. On Saturday, September 21st, the district attorney's team created a command center. A large whiteboard filled an entire wall. Two timelines were sketched out, one in blue and one in red. 2022, Rachel Murphy. June, jealousy begins. July, password taken. August, $85,000 embezzled. Rachel is framed. 2024, Reagan Sutton. June, jealousy begins. July, driver's license taken. September, attempted murder. Reagan is framed. Monroe stood before the board with her arms folded, the exact same method. This is her signature move, Bradley agreed. We can charge her with a pattern of criminal conduct. The penalties will be more severe. I want it all, Monroe declared. Every journal page, every money record, every person who can testify. I started my laptop and showed them the information I had gathered all week. Both journals from 2022 and 2024, showing 90 days of planning in my case and 30 days in Rachel's. I had financial documents, Bitcoin transactions, payments to fake identification sellers, and overseas account transfers for Rachel's situation. I had digital proof like browser data, recovered texts, cloud backups, and login times. I also had a list of witnesses. Rachel Murphy, Jennifer Fisher when she was well enough to talk, Emma Pfizer with a child-appropriate statement about the car crash, and Officer Kyle Stevens who arrested me. The Uber driver who saw the Range Rover leaving was also on the list. Monroe's assistant, a young attorney named Vincent Shaw, wrote everything down as I explained each piece of evidence. He was probably 30 with a nice suit and an intelligent look. He listened quietly, but I could tell he was organizing the story Monroe would tell the jury. After I was done, Monroe looked at Bradley. How strong is the 2024 confession? It is airtight, Bradley confirmed. It was voluntary without any pressure. Paige had a meltdown during the interview. She admitted everything on camera. I wanted her to hurt. I did not care if the officer's wife died. Those were her exact words. A hint of a smile appeared on Monroe's face. Excellent. Let us make sure she is convicted. On Sunday, September 22nd, Monroe called us into her office again. Rachel and I sat next to each other. Bradley was by the door. Monroe had a large file folder in front of her. She opened it. Here is the list of charges we are bringing against Paige Sutton. She began to read. For the 2024 crimes, 2 counts of attempted murder for Jennifer Pfizer and Emma Pfizer. The charges were a laundry list of felonies, aggravated assault with a weapon, a hit and run, endangering a child, identity theft, and obstructing justice. Monroe turned a page. The offenses from 2022 were just as serious. Embezzlement of $85,000, wire fraud, stealing Rachel Murphy's identity, computer fraud. She flipped another page. There were also pattern enhancements for organized criminal activity. Monroe finally looked up at me. If convicted of everything, Paige faces 25 to 30 years in state prison, with no chance of parole for the first 15 years. The reality of those words hung in the air. Paige would be in her 50s when she was released. If she was ever released. The air in the office suddenly felt thick. Beside me, Rachel took a sharp breath. What will happen to my parents? I asked, my own voice sounding hollow. Monroe's expression softened just a little. Wallace and Margaret face separate charges, she explained. Conspiracy, filing a false police report, and that fake 911 call. If they testify against Paige, they could get probation. If not, she paused. They are looking at 2 to 5 years each. I nodded slowly. They made their bed. Monroe closed the file. Arraignment is Monday at 9 in the morning. Paige will enter her plea. It will almost certainly be not guilty. After our meeting, we began preparing for the trial. I am going to need both of you to testify. Rachel and I looked at one another, and she gave a firm nod. We will be there. When we walked out of the district attorney's office, the late afternoon sun was intense. It was still 95 degrees in Austin, the heat rising from the pavement in waves. The air smelled like burnt asphalt and exhaust. Rachel and I walked to the parking garage without saying a word. We were silent until we stood by my car. She stopped and faced me. Reagan, she said, her voice filled with emotion. Thank you for believing in me and for fighting for me. I looked at her, a woman whose life my sister had completely destroyed. At that moment, my focus shifted. This was no longer just about proving my own innocence. This was about ensuring Paige could never ruin another person's life. This is not over yet, I told her. On Monday, Paige will plead not guilty, and then the real fight begins. Rachel nodded. I am ready. But I did not voice my deepest fear. I was terrified because Paige was out on bail. She knew I had turned on her. She knew about the journals, about Rachel, and about the case against her. Paige had absolutely nothing left to lose. And people with nothing to lose are the most dangerous of all. I remembered her journal entry from day 90. She has no proof, but now I had all the proof I needed. And Paige knew I had it. This meant she would either run or fight, and I was not sure which was worse. On Monday morning, September 25th, I sat in the Travis County Courthouse gallery. I watched my sister plead not guilty to 14 different criminal charges. The courtroom was filled to capacity. The media took up the back rows, their pens flying across notepads. Jennifer Fisher's family sat on the prosecution side. My parents sat right behind Paige, with their lawyer next to them. I sat all by myself. Paige walked in wearing a perfect cream dress and heels, not a prison jumpsuit. She was still free. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Catherine Walsh, looked down from her bench. Paige Sutton, you are charged with 14 counts, she began. 2 counts of attempted murder, aggravated assault, felony hit and run, child endangerment, identity theft, and obstruction of justice. The list went on. Embezzlement, wire fraud, computer fraud, and stealing Rachel Murphy's identity. Finally, organized criminal activity. It took 30 seconds to read the entire list. Each charge felt like a physical blow. How do you plead? Paige's voice was steady and confident. Not guilty, Your Honor. A cold dread settled in my stomach. She was going to fight this. District Attorney Monroe stood up. Your Honor, the state requests that bail be revoked. The defendant is a danger to witnesses, particularly her sister, Reagan Sutton. Gregory Palmer rose to his feet. Your Honor, my client has followed every condition of her bail. She is not a flight risk. She has deep roots in this community and had a perfect record before these charges. Judge Walsh looked at Paige. Bail will remain, but Miss Sutton, you are ordered to have no contact whatsoever with Reagan Sutton or Rachel Murphy. Any violation will land you in jail immediately. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. The trial is scheduled for December 2nd, 2024. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck wood. I got up to leave, moving through the crowd. In the hallway, I saw them, Paige, Wallace, and Margaret, standing with their lawyer, already planning. Wallace saw me and took a step in my direction. Reagan, we have to talk as a family. I kept moving. I have nothing to say to you. My mother's voice was shaky. Please, darling, Paige made a mistake. She is still your sister. I stopped and turned to face them. She tried to have me sent to prison for 10 years. That is not a mistake. That is an attempt to destroy a life. Paige stepped forward and her cold, flat eyes met mine. You are going to be sorry for this, Reagan. You are tearing this family apart. I did not tear it apart, I said softly. You did, 90 days ago. A deputy stepped between us. Miss Sutton, remember the no contact order. Step back. Paige stared at me for a moment longer, then walked away with our parents. I watched them go down the corridor. I knew, standing in that marble hall, that it was the last time I would ever speak to them as family. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of trial preparation. In the first week, I met with Monroe's team every morning. They coached me on how to testify. Only answer the question you are asked. Do not offer extra details. The defense will call you vindictive, so stay calm. We reviewed evidence for hours. My recording from the night of the crash, the journal pages highlighted and tagged, financial records of Paige's money transfers, every piece of the puzzle I had put together. Then came week 2. Jennifer Fisher was released from the hospital. 6 weeks after the collision, she could walk and speak well enough to testify. Monroe arranged a meeting. Jennifer was much thinner than she appeared in photos. Her left arm was in a sling, but her eyes were bright. Thank you, she said, for discovering the truth. I did not know what to reply. I am just so sorry this happened to you. It was not your fault. She reached out with her good hand and squeezed mine. You stopped her. That is what counts. Her daughter, Emma Fisher, who was 7, was too traumatized to testify in court. So Monroe had her give a video deposition. Emma was in a friendly room with a trauma specialist asking gentle questions. I watched the recording one time. I saw the little girl talk about the impact, the airbag, and her mother's screams. I could not watch it again. In week 3, Palmer filed motions to have evidence thrown out. First, he claimed the journals were an invasion of privacy. Judge Walsh denied it, ruling that my access to the family cloud account was legal. Then he tried to exclude all the iCloud evidence. That motion was also denied. Next, Rachel gave her deposition. I watched from an observation room as she calmly and consistently told her story. She recounted the events of 2022 without hesitation. Palmer's associate questioned her for 2 hours, trying to trip her up, but she did not waver. On October 15th, Monroe had me come in for my final preparation. You will be on the stand for 4 to 6 hours, she told me. Palmer will attack your credibility. He will say you faked the journals out of jealousy. You must remain calm. I will. He will call your iCloud access hacking. We know it was not, but he will try to plant doubt in the jury's mind. You have to be solid as a rock. I nodded. Monroe leaned back. Reagan, I have been prosecuting criminals like her for 20 years, and I have never seen a criminal document their actions like this. Most of them try to hide their tracks. Paige wrote about her crimes as if she was proud of them. That is our key advantage. Her own words are going to convict her. What if the jury thinks the journals are fake? Then we have her confession on video. We have Paige screaming that she wanted me to suffer, that she did not care if the other driver died. You cannot fake that kind of rage. She stood up. Get some rest. The trial starts Monday, December 2nd at 9 in the morning. We are going to bury her. The night before the trial, I could not sleep. I stared out at the city lights, thinking of Paige's defiant expression. She still believed she could win. Palmer's plan was clear. He would attack me, painting me as a vengeful sister who forged evidence to create doubt. But there was one thing he could not explain away. It was Paige's own voice on that confession tape. I had watched that video so many times to prepare myself for seeing it in court. Every time I heard Paige scream that she wanted me to suffer, my own resolve hardened. Tomorrow, 12 strangers would hear it too. They would see her journals. They would hear from Jennifer Fisher. They would listen to Rachel Murphy describe 2 years of misery. Then they would hear me explain how I uncovered the truth piece by painful piece. They were about to decide if my sister would spend the next 30 years in prison or if she would walk free. On December 2nd, 2024, the trial of Paige Sutton started on a cold Monday morning. It lasted for 5 days, but it felt like 5 years. The courtroom was full every single day. There were reporters, advocates for the victims, and curious people who read about the case in the Austin newspaper. I sat in the front row on the prosecution's side with Rachel beside me. Across the aisle, our parents Wallace and Margaret sat behind Paige and her lawyer, Gregory Palmer. We never once looked at each other. Judge Catherine Walsh was in charge, the same serious judge from the very first hearing. 12 jurors were in the box. There were 7 women and 5 men, with ages from their early 20s to their late 60s. These ordinary people would determine my sister's future. The district attorney Monroe stood up to give his opening statement. He said this was a case about jealousy, careful planning, and destruction. Paige Sutton spent 3 months plotting to send her own sister to prison, and 2 years before that, she completely destroyed another woman's life. He said this is who she is, a predator who targets successful women because of envy and then ruins them without any guilt. The evidence will prove that Paige Sutton is guilty of every charge. Then Palmer stood up, looking smooth and confident. He said this was a case about a family that was torn apart. He argued that Reagan Sutton, a tech expert, had the skills and the reason to create fake digital evidence. He claimed I broke into my sister's private accounts, violated her privacy, and made up a story to escape blame for a crime that I committed. The defense will prove there is reasonable doubt because that is all you need. If you have any doubt whatsoever, you must find her not guilty. On day 2, it was my turn on the witness stand. Monroe had me explain the timeline, the arrest, the license that went missing, the investigation, and the journals. That was 4 hours of direct questions. Then Palmer stood up to cross-examine me. He asked, Miss Sutton, you admit you looked at your sister's journal without her permission? I said I accessed a family cloud account that I legally managed. He replied, how convenient for you that you just happened to find evidence of your sister's guilt. I stated that the journals are in Paige's own words. The computer data proves every entry was written on the date it shows. I did not make up anything. He pushed back, you are a cybersecurity analyst. You could change that data. I said I did not. He replied, but you could have. I looked directly at the jury. I could have, but I did not. And the forensic analysis proves that. Palmer questioned me for another hour, but he could not break me. On day 3, Rachel took the stand. She told her story, the frame up in 2022, the stolen password, the $85,000. She described 2 years of being poor and unable to find a job. Her voice was strong the entire time. Palmer's questioning lasted 30 minutes. He could not shake her. Jennifer Fisher testified after her. She was thinner and quieter, but she was steady. She talked about the crash, the impact, and waking up in the hospital. Her daughter had a concussion. Then she found out someone hit her car on purpose. I thought it was an accident, she said, until I learned it was planned. That I was targeted because my husband is a detective, that my daughter and I were just collateral damage. Her voice cracked on that last word. Two of the jurors wiped tears from their eyes. Day 4 was for the confession video. Monroe stood up. Your Honor, the state would like to show Exhibit 47, the interrogation of Paige Sutton, recorded on September 19, 2024. Palmer objected. He said this confession was forced. Overruled, Judge Walsh said. The defendant was not under arrest. She was interviewed as a witness. A Miranda warning was not required. The confession is allowed. The lights went down. The screen at the front of the courtroom came to life, and I saw Paige sitting across from me in that interrogation room. The video started in the middle of our talk, and my voice was calm and cold. Did you choose Jennifer Fisher on purpose? Paige's voice got louder. I did not care if that cop's wife died. She was just in the way. This was about you. The courtroom became completely silent. One juror covered her mouth with her hand. Another leaned back, his face filled with disgust. The video kept playing, and Paige screamed, I wanted you to suffer. I wanted you to know what it is like to lose everything. Then you could see the moment she realized what she had said. Her face turned pale. Wait, no, I did not mean. The video ended. The lights came back on. Paige stared down at the table, her hands shaking. She did not look up. Palmer stood, trying to fix the damage. Your Honor, my client was under extreme emotional stress. The confession was voluntary, Monroe said. Miss Sutton had an outburst all on her own. She was not forced or threatened. She told the truth, and now the jury has heard it. Judge Walsh nodded. Continue. On day 5, they gave closing arguments. Monroe stood before the jury. You have seen the journals, 90 days of planning. You have heard her own words. I wanted her to suffer. You have seen the evidence. 2 women, 2 frame-ups, and 1 person who did it. Paige Sutton is guilty, and she deserves every year the law gives. Palmer made his last attempt. Reasonable doubt. That is all you need. Can you be 100% certain those journals were not changed? That the confession was not forced? If you have any doubt at all, you must let her go free. The jury left the room at 2:15 in the afternoon. Rachel and I waited outside in the hallway. Bradley joined us, leaning on the wall with his arms crossed. How long do you think it will be? Rachel asked. It could be hours, or it could be days. I could not answer. At 6:30 in the evening, the court deputy came out. The jury is back. It had been 4 hours. We went back into the courtroom. Paige sat frozen between her lawyers. Wallace and Margaret looked like they had aged 10 years in 5 days. Judge Walsh entered. We all stood up, and then we sat down. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman, a man in his 50s with graying hair and glasses, stood up. We have, Your Honor, on the charge of the attempted murder of Jennifer Fisher. How do you find the defendant? Guilty. Margaret began to sob. The foreman kept reading. Attempted murder of Emma Fisher. Guilty. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Guilty. Felony hit and run. Guilty. Child endangerment. Guilty. Identity theft of Reagan Sutton. Guilty. Obstruction of justice. Guilty. He read all 14 of the charges. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Paige's face just fell apart. Her hands gripped the table so hard her knuckles were white. Palmer put a hand on her shoulder, but she did not seem to notice. Judge Walsh's voice cut through the room. Miss Sutton, you have been found guilty on all counts. Your sentencing is set for December 20th, 2 weeks from today. Take the defendant into custody. 2 deputies walked over to Paige. She stood up on shaking legs. They handcuffed her hands behind her. As they led her to the side door, she turned and looked at me. There was no fight left in her eyes. There was just nothing. Her lips moved. The courtroom was too noisy for me to hear her, but I could read the words. I hate you. I did not respond. There was nothing left for me to say. The door shut. Paige was gone. December 20th, 2024. It was sentencing day. The courtroom felt colder this time. Or maybe it was just the feeling of it all being over. 2 weeks had passed since the guilty verdict. Paige sat at the table in an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed in front of her. No more expensive dresses, no more acting. Gregory Palmer sat with her, but there was nothing left for him to argue. Judge Catherine Walsh looked down from her bench. Before sentencing, the court will hear the victim impact statements. Jennifer Fisher stood up first. Her voice was steady, but her hands were gripping the podium. My daughter Emma is 7 years old. Every night she has nightmares. She screams when she hears a car horn. Paige Sutton did not just hit our car, she crashed straight into our lives. My husband Robert is a detective. He sees the worst of people every day, but nothing prepared him for arriving at that scene and finding his family bleeding. Paige Sutton does not deserve mercy because she showed us none. Rachel Murphy stood up next. She was thinner than she had been 9 months ago, but she looked stronger. 2 years ago, Paige Sutton ruined my career, my reputation, and my relationships with my family. I lost everything. I spent 2 years thinking I had done something to deserve it, that maybe I had made a terrible mistake, but I had not. Paige took everything from me because she was jealous. Your Honor, she needs to be stopped because if she ever gets out, she will do this to somebody else. Then it was my turn. I walked to the podium and looked at Judge Walsh, not at Paige. Paige is my sister. I protected her for my entire life, and she paid me back by trying to put me in prison for 10 years. But this is not about me anymore. This is about making sure Paige never has the chance to destroy another person's life. Your Honor, I asked for the maximum sentence. Judge Walsh looked at Paige. Miss Sutton, stand up. Paige stood, her chains making a rattling sound. The judge's voice was cold and steady. I have reviewed all the evidence, the reports, and the statements from the victims. What you did was not a moment of weakness. It was calculated, planned, and cruel. You wrote down your plan to destroy your sister for 90 days, and before that, you ruined Rachel Murphy's life for the most petty reason of all, jealousy. She paused. You have shown absolutely no remorse. Even your confession was filled with rage, not regret. The law allows for longer sentences in cases with a pattern of crime. I will be applying those longer sentences. On the charges of attempted murder, I sentence you to 15 years for each count to be served one after the other. For the charges of embezzlement and fraud related to Rachel Murphy, I sentence you to another 8 years. Combined with the other charges, your total sentence is 30 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. You will not be eligible for parole for the first 15 years. Paige's legs gave out. Margaret cried out from the gallery. Wallace just sat there, frozen, his face gray. Judge Walsh's gavel came down. Bailiff, take the defendant into custody. 2 deputies took Paige's arms and led her toward the door. She did not look back this time, and I felt nothing. Not relief, not satisfaction, just an empty feeling. It was finally over. 9 months later, in September of 2025, my life was different. It was better. I was whole again. I looked at my reflection in the window of my new corner office at Secure Net Solutions. My new title was Director of Cybersecurity Architecture with a salary of $230,000 a year, a nice increase from $178,000. Last year's bonus of $52,000 was used for 2 very important things. First, a $100,000 fund was set up for Emma Fizer's college and therapy. Second, $214,000 paid for all of Jennifer Fisher's medical bills. She sent a card that I keep on my desk. It says I saved her family twice, first from Paige, then from debt. Just a few doors down, Rachel Murphy has her own office. I hired her 6 months ago as the senior event coordinator, and her record has been completely cleared. The district attorney helped clear her name the day after Paige was sentenced. Rachel saved up $25,000, found a nice apartment in South Congress, and is slowly fixing things with her parents. Just last week, she told me she got another promotion to lead event strategist. She said she never imagined she would get her career back. I told her that she had earned every bit of it. Jennifer and Emma are both getting better. Jennifer is back at her job at Dell Children's Hospital. Emma has therapy 2 times a week, and her nightmares are happening less often. She started 2nd grade, has new friends, and is smiling much more. 3 months ago, Robert Fisher called me just to say thank you for everything. I told him I was just happy they were safe. He replied that they were safe because of me. Wallace and Margaret both admitted to obstructing justice. They each received 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and $80,000 in fines. Their big Westlake house sold for $3.1 million. After paying $425,000 for Paige's lawyers and $200,000 for their own, they moved into a small 2-bedroom condo in North Austin. I see them once a year on Thanksgiving. It is always awkward, polite, and very cold. We never mention Paige. She is now at the Mountain View unit in Gatesville, Texas, a women's prison about 2 hours away. She wrote me a short letter 4 months ago with only 3 sentences. It said, I am sorry, I was wrong. The last sentence asked me to please write back. I threw the letter in the trash. I did not feel hate for her. I felt nothing at all, which might be even worse. Today I am sitting with Rachel at a coffee shop on 2nd Street. The warm September sunlight is streaming through the window. Rachel is smiling as she tells me she was promoted again, this time to senior event strategist. I told her she deserved it. She reached out and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. She said she never really thanked me for believing in her and for saving her. I told her that we saved each other. We lifted our coffee cups in a small toast. When Rachel's phone buzzed, she saw it was a client meeting in 20 minutes. I told her to go ahead and I would take care of the bill. She gave me a hug and asked about dinner this week, and I said absolutely. I took a moment alone just looking out at the city of Austin. Just 1 year ago, I was being arrested for a crime I did not do. My own sister had set out to destroy me, but she forgot one important thing about me. My name is Reagan Sutton. My job is to solve problems, and the biggest problem I ever had to solve was my own family. My phone buzzed with an email about a new case. A logistics company in Dallas had a security problem. I left cash on the table and walked out into the beautiful September day. I was finally free. I was not just free from the charges, but also free from a family who never truly loved me. And for the very first time, I felt like I was right where I was meant to be. For everyone listening to this story, please remember this. I was given the intelligence to find the truth, the strength to defend myself, and the bravery to choose what was right over my own family. There were 3 moments when I could have just given up. First, when I found the journal entry. Second, when I saw how much Rachel was hurting. And third, when the confession video was shown in court. But something kept me going because some fights are important enough to risk losing everything. When I look back, I do not feel bad about exposing Paige, but I do feel bad that I did not see the warning signs sooner. The jealousy was always there, along with the constant need to compete. She always blamed others for her own mistakes. Betrayal from a family member does not happen with a big speech like in the movies. It sneaks up on you, looking like a simple rivalry until suddenly you are in handcuffs because your own sister tried to ruin your life. Please do not make my mistake. Do not wait until you are framed for a terrible crime to understand that revenge within a family is not just a story. It is real and it can break you. So here is what I suggest. Always trust your gut feelings. If a person in your family makes you feel worthless, jealous, or scared, you have to protect yourself even if you love them. Betrayal from a loved one is the most painful kind. They know your passwords, your habits, and all your weaknesses. If they ever use that information against you, you might not get a second chance to fix it. I almost did not get one. This experience taught me that being related by blood does not mean someone will be loyal. It taught me that the people you would do anything for can sometimes be the ones trying to hurt you the most. So, if my story touched you in some way, please leave a comment below. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you thought you could trust? Please share this video with anyone who might need to hear this message and subscribe to this channel. The next stories I share will explore even deeper into the dark things people can do. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I want to add a quick note that the stories on this channel may include fictional parts made for educational reasons. If you do not like this kind of content, please feel free to watch other videos that you might enjoy more. Stay safe out there.